बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। अस्सलाम वालेकुम स्टूडेंट्स, उम्मीद करता हूं कि आप सब लोग खैरियत के साथ होंगे and I welcome you all here today to the 10th lecture of consumer psychology. So let us start today once again with a brief description of what we discussed in our last lecture. Students, our last lecture was a detailed discussion on the concept of attitude scales. And we discussed that in order for a company to be successful, it must be able to understand the needs of different consumer groups. And then this company must be able to serve the consumers on those different needs better than the competition does. This is the way a company becomes successful. And consumer behavior, when we study the behavior of the consumer in all of its different ramifications, in different aspects, we are just trying to understand that how consumers would react to a certain promotional message, as well as we are trying to understand that what kind of decisions consumers usually make and what kind of factors do they consider while making these decisions. Such kind of information, when the consumer researchers have this information, the marketing department can effectively use this information in their future promotional as well as advertisement strategies. So it becomes very, very important in a way for the marketeers to understand that what are the consumers' attitudes towards different products and different products' features. And in order to understand consumers' attitudes, the marketing researchers often use the attitude scales. There are many different kinds of attitude scales, but at this point we discussed that what exactly the word attitude means. And for that, we had a small exercise in which I showed you three words in a succession, and I asked you to speak whatever comes to your mind after watching those words. You had written those words, and the three words that I showed to you in our last lecture were mother, home, and car. And at the end of the exercise, you found out that whatever you have written, it in fact represents your attitude. Now, how come this represents your attitude? Now, let me define the attitude for you once again. Attitudes are learned dispositions to act towards certain objects in a certain specific manners. And at the end of the exercise, we found out that we usually tend to be respectful towards some other figures. We usually try to see that our homes are comfortable, peaceful, and we have a concept of security attached with our homes. And when we came down to the word of cars, we found out that we usually tend to like the cars that are strong, durable, and fast, as well as energetic. And we are constantly changing our attitudes with reference to our interactions with the environment and our interactions with significant others in our environment. Students, I told you that there are 4 different types of attitude scales that are usually being used in the consumer psychology. And those 4 different types of attitude scales were, number 1, Likert scale, number 2, semantic differential scale, number 3, behavior intention scale, and number 4, rank order scale. Let me give you a brief review of the Likert scale. We discussed that Likert scale is very easy to prepare for the market researchers as well as to interpret simultaneously. Likert scale is very easy for the subjects to fill it. This is usually a questionnaire that contains questions related to different features of a certain product. However, these questions are placed in a very, very systematic fashion. With reference to different features that are inbuilt in a product, there are different kinds of statements. Those statements are written on the left-hand side column, and for each column, consumers can evaluate that feature with reference to their likeness or dislikeness, or with reference to the positive or negative features of that particular side of the product. So usually a 5-point or a 7-point scale is used in the Likert scale, which allows the researchers to place a neutral option in the middle. And usually on the left-hand side are included the positive options, and on the right-hand side are included the negative options. So it allows the respondents to exactly pinpoint their feelings with reference to certain product features by taking the certain corresponding number that explicitly mentions their evaluation about certain feature of the product. We discussed that Likert scale usually contains an odd number scale or an even numbered scale. And we further discussed that Likert scales are being excessively used in the marketing research as well as consumer research, so that the explicit details about the consumer's perceptions regarding different product features could be found out. We then went on to discussing the semantic differential scale. Students, semantic differential scale is also like Likert scale, very easy to prepare for the researchers as well as to interpret. And we discussed in our last lecture that semantic differential scale usually consists of bipolar adjectives. By bipolar adjectives, I mean to say that something like good or bad, hot or cold, these are the two bipolar adjectives that can simultaneously be used to mention a certain product feature. In semantic differential scale, respondents are shown different statements regarding different features of a certain product, or they are shown different list of products, and the respondents can rate those products or product features with reference to their likeness or their dislikeness. And the 5-point or 7-point scale allows the respondents to exactly pinpoint that on what level do they evaluate a certain product's features. In semantic differential scale, the neutral option is usually kept in the middle, and from the middle towards the left side are kept the positive options, and from the middle towards the right side are kept the negative option. At this point, we discussed that why an odd number scale is used in semantic differential scale. This was to allow the respondents to have a neutral option. However, in certain cases, researchers would like to eliminate the possibility of a neutral option, and in that case, this becomes an even numbered scale. Students, we discussed that care must be taken to vary the location of the positive and the negative aspects of a certain product or its features on the semantic differential scale. If we are using the semantic differential scale in English language, then we keep the positive aspects of a product or a product feature on the left-hand side. This is so because we are used to writing English from left-hand side to the right-hand side, which is the way English is written. So when we use English language, the positives are kept on the left-hand side. If we are using the semantic differential scale in Urdu language, then we would keep the positive aspects of a product or the positive features of a product on the right-hand side, because we write Urdu language from right-hand side to the left-hand side. At this point, we also discussed that semantic differential scale can be used to generate graphical profiles of the consumer's preferences. So, like we had an exercise last time with reference to a carbonated soft drink, we were able to find out that what was the existing profile with reference to taste of a certain carbonated soft drink, and we also found out that after research, they found out that what is the ideal profile of a carbonated soft drink. And according to the semantic differential scales graphs that were constructed for both of these profiles, market researchers could easily compare both of the profiles, and they could find out that where the existing profile is with reference to the ideal profile, so that they could make the requisite changes and adjustments. The next scale that we discussed was behavior intention scale. And we discussed that behavior intention scale is usually used to find out that what are the intentions of the consumers with reference to the usage of a product in a certain time period. We discussed the example of a bank and its different kinds of products, in which the bank used semantic differential scale to find out that what are the consumers' intentions to use that bank's services during the next 6 months or 6 months time period. Behavior intention scales are easy to construct and prepare, and consumers are asked to make subjective judgments regarding their future behavior. We then discussed the rank order scale, and we discussed that rank order scale is also very easy to construct and interpret for the researchers. In rank order scale, different services of an institution or different products of a products manufacturing company are rated with reference to the consumer's preferences. In our last example, we discussed a bank's different services, which consumers were rating according to their level of preference. So usually all the services or the products or the product features are mentioned, and consumers can rank them according to their preference. So that becomes so that the service or the product feature that consumers like the best, they would place it on number 1, and the service or the product that consumer like the least, they would place it on the last number. So students, this was the discussion on the attitude scales in our last lecture. Today we will move on to the next topic, which is qualitative research designs and data collection methods. Before I take you to the main theme of the qualitative research designs and data collection methods, let me give you a brief build-up onto the qualitative research. We have been discussing qualitative research during the first chapter. And at the start of the second chapter, we also had brief reference to the qualitative research. At this point, let me give you a brief review of what our discussions pertain to. As mentioned last time, qualitative research is qualitative in nature. It seeks to find out common patterns of operative values and meanings across meanings and behaviors across consumption situations. It tends to be qualitative in nature in a way that it is based upon small samples. And the respondents included in the small sample are usually asked deep questions, and respondents are given full freedom to answer those questions in as much detail as they would appreciate or as they would like. Qualitative research views each consumption situation as unique and as non-predictable. We discussed that in selecting appropriate type of research format in qualitative study, there are two most important things. And those are, number one, the purpose of the study, and number two, the types of data needed. Students, the roots of qualitative research we discussed lie in the psychoanalytic theory of psychology, as well as in clinical aspects of the psychology. And we discussed last time that psychoanalysis is a theory of personality that was developed by a visionary psychologist whose name was Dr. Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud believed that whatever we do is driven by our unconscious impulses. This is exactly what we are trying to find out in the consumer research. Because in consumer research, this is supposed that most of the time the consumer's behavior is driven by their unconscious impulses, and they don't even realize that why they are purchasing a certain product. We discussed an example in quite a bit of detail in one of our last lectures. The example was of a young man who goes to a superstore in order to purchase a shampoo. And while he goes to the superstore to purchase the shampoo, he's thinking that he will purchase a shampoo that gives him best quality at the cheapest price. And when he goes on the superstore and he gets into the section of the shampoos, he comes across so many different kinds of shampoos. And he goes on reading their labels and watching the pictures of the models. So at the end of the entire exercise, he ends up purchasing a shampoo that's much more expensive than the amount that he had budgeted for it. And when we asked him that why did he purchase this particular shampoo, he came out with different kinds of reasons to purchase that shampoo. And most of those reasons were shaped in a way that this gentleman would appear to be very, very intelligent for making such a wise choice. However, we found out in our last example that this gentleman ended up buying that particular shampoo only because he was attracted towards the picture of the model that he saw on the label of the shampoo. So all the qualitative research and its methodologies are having their roots in the psychoanalytic as well as the clinical aspects of psychology. So this was a brief background as to the roots of the qualitative research methods. At this point, let me take you towards the main methods, the qualitative research methods. Students, today we will study 5 different kinds of techniques, which are number 1, depth interviews, number 2, focus groups, number 3, discussion guides, number 4, projective techniques, and number 5, metaphor analysis. So let's move towards the depth interviews first of all. As you can see on the slide, depth interview is a lengthy, generally 30 minutes to 1 hour, non-structured interview between a respondent and a highly trained interviewer. In order to make you understand the concept of depth interview, let me give you an example. Suppose there is a pharmaceutical company that plans to launch a new antibiotic. Antibiotic drugs are usually the drugs that we use when we suffer from certain kinds of viral infections. अमूमन हमें वायरल इन्फेक्शंस हो जाती हैं जिसकी वजह से हमारा गला खराब हो जाता है या जख्मों में अमूमन इन्फेक्शन हो जाती है और इन्फेक्शन की एक मेन निशानी होती है कि हमें उसके साथ साथ बुखार भी होता है. So an antibiotic can be prescribed in many different kinds of medical conditions which are caused by a certain virus that intrudes inside the body. Now this pharmaceutical company plans to launch an antibiotic, a new one. However, before they launch it, they would like to understand that what are the different factors that doctors usually consider before prescribing an antibiotic. At this point, let me give you a brief understanding of how the antibiotics get to the hands of the end consumers who are the patients. अमूमन पेशेंट्स होते हैं वो डॉक्टर्स के पास जाते हैं. जब भी आपको बुखार होता है या कोई वायरल इन्फेक्शन होती है तो आप किसी डॉक्टर के पास जाते हैं. जो डॉक्टर्स होते हैं आमतौर पर जनरल प्रैक्टिशनर्स होते हैं जिनके पास हम छोटी मोटी शिकायत के लिए या इन्फेक्शंस के लिए जाते हैं. और ये वो डॉक्टर्स होते हैं जो हमें मुख्तलिफ किस्म की एंटीबायोटिक्स प्रेस्क्राइब करते हैं. Now, in this case, if this company wants to understand that what are those factors that doctors consider before prescribing an antibiotic, then they would be able to successfully launch a marketing campaign through which they will be able to pitch in their antibiotic as a most effective defense against the viral infections. So this company hires a marketing research company who plans to engage in a qualitative research to find out what are the different factors important to the doctors. The marketing research company decides to identify different doctors who are doing their general practice in the areas that are related to the target segments of the consumers. So once they have identified different general practitioners, they decide to engage them into depth interviews. Before going into the depth interviews, they decide on a small discussion plan. This discussion plan is not very well planned, but this contains some very general questions. And those general questions are the kinds of questions that you could see on the slide. For example, please tell us something about the use of antibiotics in your practice. What are the different diseases in which you prescribe an antibiotic? What antibiotics do you usually prescribe and why? When these kinds of questions are discussed with the doctors, they find out that the trust issue emerges. Doctors, since they are treating diseases that their patients are suffering from, and since this is a very, very noble profession and doctors are more and more concerned about the life of their patients. So in a way, it becomes very important decision for doctors to find out exactly the kind of antibiotic that would be not only most helpful for their patients, but the patients could purchase it in cheap price. So the issues that emerged out of these depth interviews with the doctors were something like this. The doctors thought that most of the antibiotics that are imported into this country come from very, very reliable sources because they are developed by the multinational corporations. However, they had certain reservations about it that most of these antibiotics, their initial tests were done outside the country. Initial tests के बारे में आपको थोड़ा सा बता दूं कि जब किसी एंटीबायोटिक को मार्केट के अंदर भेजा जाता है तो किसी भी ड्रग के मार्केट में भेजने से पहले उस ड्रग के ट्रायल्स होते हैं. उस ड्रग के ट्रायल्स में ये देखा जाता है कि ये ड्रग एक खास एरिया के लोगों के लिए और एक खास किस्म की बीमारी के अंदर किस तरह से इफेक्टिव होती है और किस तरह से असरअंदाज होती है. And after a number of those trials are conducted, only then the reliability and the validity of drug is proved. So the doctor's concern is very, very legitimate कि जो antibiotics जिनका पाकिस्तान के अंदर samples टेस्ट नहीं किए गए, जिनकी स्टडीज पाकिस्तान में नहीं की गई, वो शायद इतनी ज़्यादा रिलायबल ना हो, लेकिन since they come from a very respectable source and since multinational companies have very standardized procedures of coming up with different drugs and different products, then doctors usually think that those are some reliable sources through which the drugs are coming. However, doctors would be happy if some drug is manufactured in Pakistan and the drugs trials are conducted inside the country. Then if the drug is manufactured inside the country, if it's not being imported, then naturally the drug would be very, very cheap compared to the imported drugs. So these were some of the findings that the market researchers made up. Another issue that the researchers explored was that यूजुअली एंटीबायोटिक्स जो होती हैं उनका टेस्ट बहुत बिटर होता है एंड इट बिकम्स वेरी डिफिकल्ट टू एडमिनिस्टर दोज ड्रग्स टू द चिल्ड्रन. So doctors thought that an ideal antibiotic probably would be one that is manufactured in Pakistan by a reliable company. And this drug's tests are conducted in Pakistan. And this drug also has a very good taste so that it could be easily administered to the children. And more than that, there were some medical concerns in which they mentioned that they would like to have an antibiotic that covers a maximum range of viruses, which means that all of the antibiotics kill different viruses inside the body, but then viruses are of many different kinds. And every antibiotic has a range of certain viruses. Now, if this range could be expanded, naturally that antibiotic would be effective for more and more conditions. So these were some of the findings that the marketing research company came up with after conducting their depth interviews. Students, I hope you would have enjoyed this example. Now, let's just keep this example fresh in your mind, and let me give you a debriefing in which we will try to understand that what the in-depth interviews are. The in-depth interviews usually involve one highly trained and highly skilled interviewer as well as one subject. The interviews can go on for a time period between 30 minutes to 1 hour. Since there is only one respondent involved, the questions are asked in greater detail. Usually the interviewers do not have a well-planned discussion plan. They come up with very general questions, and they try to lead the respondents from one question to another question in order to explore the issue in greater detail. These discussions are tape recorded or videotaped, which are then later on transcribed. By transcription, it means that all of the tapes that you have recorded or videotaped, you write them on the computer or on the pages. And these transcribed scripts of the interviews are then studied by the researchers, by the experts who can analyze the entire discussion pattern. So the important points about in-depth interviews are, just remember that the composition of in-depth interview is that it has one interviewer and one person. The interviewer does not have a detailed discussion plan. They usually tend to take the discussion from one point to another. Respondents are given full freedom to answer the questions in as much detail as possible. Interviewer guides them towards the critical issues of the subject under study so that reliable information could be sought out of all of the entire exercise. Students, let me show you some of the appropriate situations in which in-depth interview is more feasible in exploring the issue in detail. Let me take you to the slide. Situation number 1 is when detailed study of individuals' behaviors, attitudes, or needs is required. Situation number 2 is when the subject matter is likely to be highly confidential nature, which means that some subject matters are extremely confidential and private. For example, the concept of investments. For example, there might be a company that could be manufacturing the drugs that help treat obesity. And now, if a company wants to explore the issues related to obesity, then they have to discuss the issue in detail. And obesity is an issue that deals with someone's personal image, and usually people are very shy to discuss their personal images in front of other people. So if we are talking about obesity, and let me tell you, obesity is मोटापा. अगर हम मोटापे के बारे में बातचीत कर रहे हैं तो बेहतर ये होगा कि हम एक बंदे से एक टाइम पे गुफ्तगू करें और उससे डिटेल में इंफॉर्मेशन लें जिसमें वो हमें ये बता सकें कि मोटापे के बारे में वो किस तरह से फील करते हैं और मोटापा उनके पर्सनल इमेज को उनके ख्याल में किस तरह से इम्पैक्ट करता है. The third situation could be when the subject matter is emotionally charged or embarrassing nature. Once again, the weight reduction formula can be a very good example for this kind of situation. Situation number 4 is certain strong social norms. For example, child rearing practices. बच्चों की नशो नुमा, बच्चों को किस तरह से पाला जाए, वालिदैन अमूमन इस चीज़ के ऊपर डिस्कस करना चाहते हैं। और इस किस्म की डिस्कशन जो है, क्योंकि ये फैमिली के बड़े प्राइवेट मैटर्स भी बाज़ औक़ात इसमें डिस्कस होते हैं, तो बेहतर ये होता है कि इस किस्म के मैटर्स को डिस्कस करने के लिए इन डेप्थ इंटरव्यूज़ कंडक्ट किए जाएं, जिससे से ज़्यादा इंफॉर्मेशन हासिल की जा सके। The next situation could be detailed understanding of a complicated behavior or decision-making patterns. Now, what could be a good example for that other than the family planning practices? This is a very, very private natured affair and matter of the families. And they can feel more comfortable in a situation where one person is answering the questions to one researcher. In-depth interviews are very, very helpful while interviewing the professional people as well, in which professional people would be able to impart greater details about a certain subject matter. Students, let's talk about the purposes of in-depth interviews. There are many different purposes, but two of the main purposes of the in-depth interviews are number one, copy testing, and number two, auto driving. Copy testing means that all of the promotional and advertisement schemes that are planned by the marketing department in close coordination with their marketing research company, उसके अंदर प्रोडक्ट के बारे में ऐसी इंफॉर्मेशन डिज़ाइन की जाती है जो आसानी से लोगों को कम्युनिकेट की जा सके, या किसी एडवर्टाइजमेंट को बनाते वक्त हमें ऐसी इंफॉर्मेशन की ज़रूरत होती है जो जब उस एडवर्टाइजमेंट को नशर किया जाए तो वो एक्सप्लिसिटली उस प्रोडक्ट को बड़ा अट्रैक्टिवली डिलीनिएट कर सके, उसको डिस्क्राइब कर सके। तो कॉपी टेस्टिंग के लिए यूजुअली इन डेप्थ इंटरव्यूज कंडक्ट किए जाते हैं, जिसमें एक रिस्पोंडेंट को बुलाया जाता है और उसको प्रोडक्ट के बारे में जितना भी कॉपी का मटेरियल लिखा होता है, विच मीन्स दैट इंफॉर्मेशन अबाउट दैट प्रोडक्ट, उसके बारे में पूछा जाता है कि आप इस मटेरियल के बारे में कैसा महसूस करते हैं और आपको इस मटेरियल को सुनने के बाद क्या समझ आया इस प्रोडक्ट के बारे में। इसके साथ ही साथ बाज़ औक़ात ऑटो ड्राइविंग भी की जाती है। मिसाल के तौर पर बाज़ कंपनीज ये जानने की कोशिश करती हैं कि कंज्यूमर्स जो हैं वो अपने डिसीजंस बनाते वक्त क्या फैक्टर्स को मद्देनजर रखते हैं। In that case, they can videotape a consumer while that consumer is in the process of purchasing different products, say from a superstore, and then they would invite that particular consumer to a particular venue where they will show those video tapes to this consumer, and they would ask in detail as to why did he or she make certain decisions that are depicted in the videotape. Such kind of detailed discussions are very, very helpful in understanding the consumer decision-making process. Students, at this point, let's move on to the next qualitative research technique, which is called focus groups. Focus groups is another qualitative research method. The difference between focus group and the in-depth interview is that in focus group there are about 6 to 8 participants, and sometimes the number can be extended up to 12, but not more than 12, because then the interviewer cannot pay attention to all of the different respondents. एक बुनियादी सा फ़र्क इन डेप्थ इंटरव्यूज में और फोकस ग्रुप्स में पार्टिसिपेंट्स का होता है। अगर पार्टिसिपेंट 6 से कम है और 1 से ज़्यादा है, in that case it becomes the mini groups. Let me tell you briefly about the focus groups, as you can see on the slide. In focus groups, respondents are encouraged to discuss their interests, attitudes, reactions, motives, lifestyles, feelings about the product or product category usage, experience, and so on and so forth. Let us discuss the process of conducting the focus groups. In focus groups, first of all, कौन लोग होते हैं जो फोकस ग्रुप के अंदर रिस्पोंडेंट्स बनते हैं, which means that how do we recruit participants in a study that employs focus group discussion as a method of research. The most important thing in recruiting the participants of the study is that these participants should come from the target consumer categories, which means that every product is designed in connection with a certain category of consumers. और फोकस ग्रुप डिस्कशन में पार्टिसिपेट करने के लिए उन लोगों को इनवाइट किया जाता है जो उस प्रोडक्ट कंज्यूमर के कैटेगरी से बिलोंग करते हो. Only then their inputs will be extremely valuable. यूजुअली रिस्पोंडेंट्स को सिलेक्ट करने के लिए एक स्क्रीनर क्वेश्चनेयर डिजाइन किया जाता है. इन स्क्रीनर क्वेश्चनेयर ऑल ऑफ द बेसिक क्वेश्चंस which means the demographic information about the consumer is asked in the shape of questions. For example, these questions are about age, about socioeconomic background, about the educational background, the gender of the participants. These are all the information that defines the profile of a particular consumer. और consumers अगर इस प्रोफाइल पे पूरा ना उतरें तो उनको फोकस ग्रुप डिस्कशन के अंदर इनवाइट नहीं किया जा सकता. The next thing is the group is designed to reflect the characteristics of a particular group, which means that suppose a product is designed for the middle class people, then we only need to have participants coming from middle class segment of the society. If we have people from the poor segment of the society or say from the rich segment of the society, then their responses might not be that helpful for the researchers. Sometimes it happens that in focus group discussions, researchers invite users of certain products and they ask them questions regarding the product's features and different aspects of the products. They simultaneously invite people who are not using the same kind of products. Now you must understand a delicate point of difference here, that products are designed for certain category of people. Now in that particular categories, there are certain people who would use this product and there are certain other people who would be using another product which is being manufactured by the other companies. So when both of these participants are invited, when people from both of these categories are invited, they must be coming from the same demographic background. However, the only distinction is that one group of people uses this product and the other group of people does not use this product. In the focus group discussions, the most important thing is discussion guideline. A researcher who is expert at focus group discussion usually comes up with a discussion plan. This details all of the different questions that need to be asked according to the plan, so that the discussion could be carried out according to the plan. So the difference between in-depth interviews and focus group discussion is that the focus group discussions are more of structured nature than the in-depth interviews. There are three clear stages of the focus group discussions, as you could see them on the slide. Number one is establish rapport with the group, structure the rules of group interaction, and set objectives. Number two is attempt to provoke intense discussion in the relevant areas and to summarize the group's responses to determine agreement. So students, as you could understand that फोकस ग्रुप डिस्कशन के तीन बेसिक पहलू होते हैं. नंबर वन इज द स्टार्ट, जिसके अंदर इंटरव्यूअर जो है वो रिस्पोंडेंट्स के बायसेस को मिनिमाइज करने की कोशिश करता है, रैपो बिल्डिंग करता है, सो दैट the respondents would feel comfortable with the interviewer, and after the rapport has been built up, then interviewer starts asking them the questions. And gradually he leads the groups towards the critical aspects of the interview, which means all of the critical information is finally brought into the attention of the participants and the discussion is carried out on the critical points. The third most important job of an interviewer in the focus group discussion is to summarize the discussion, so that participants know that what has been summarized and where their discussion is leading to on a certain point of time during the focus group discussion. Focus group discussions जो होती हैं वो specialized conference rooms के अंदर conduct की जाती हैं. Usually the setup is more like this. Participants are taken into a room that has a window which has one-sided glass, which means that people sitting on the other side of the glass can look inside the room and see what is happening. However, the participants cannot see outside that window. So this is one-way window. Usually the conference rooms are having different gadgets that would videotape or record all of the focus group discussion session going on. And on the other side of the room, different marketing researchers are sitting and they are observing the focus group discussion going on, and they are also monitoring the responses of the participants. Students, there are different kinds of situations in which a focus group discussion is more appropriate, which means that certain kind of scenarios while conducting the research, focus group discussion is a methodology that would be more helpful to find out the right kind of information. Let me show you what are those different situations in which a focus group discussion would be more helpful. As you can see on the slide, situation number 1 will be basic need studies for product ideas creation, which means that when we are creating different kinds of ideas regarding a product, then we need to focus on what is the basic need that this product would fulfill. In that case, conducting a focus group discussion with the target consumers would be very, very helpful. Situation number 2 is new product ideas or concept exploration. When we are market researchers are working side by side with an advertising agency and they are trying to find out that what is a new idea or concept that could be used for a particular advertisement, at that point conducting a focus group discussion with participants coming from the target consumers, consumer profiles would be more helpful. Situation number 3 is product positioning studies. In product positioning studies, participants are asked different kinds of questions as to what do they think about the product, what is the product's image in their mind. In this case, a detailed discussion as to what is the utility of the product and what kind of psychological needs a product fulfills. This kind of information is gained through the focus group discussions. Situation number 4 is background studies on consumers' frames of references. And situation number 5 is establishment of consumer vocabulary as a preliminary step in questionnaire development. And finally, situation number 6 is determination of attitudes as well as behaviors. Students, in order to understand the concept of focus group discussions, let me give you one example where focus group discussions are used as a tool of research. The example is, let's suppose a mobile connections company in Pakistan wants to launch a new service package which will be utilized by the students, which means that their target consumers are students and their ages are between 18 to 24 years old. They go to different academic institutions for studies. Once they have identified this target consumer category, which is that they are students, they are males or females, they are between the ages of 18 to 24 years old, they could come from socioeconomic category A, which means rich class, or socioeconomic category B, which means middle class. They are the current mobile phone users, and number 3, they have been using the mobile phones for at least 1 year. Now, this mobile company would like to understand that what are the preferences of these youngsters while they are choosing a particular kind of mobile phone service. So they need to explore the mobile phone usage behavior amongst their target consumers. So after they have identified and recruited different consumers as respondents for their studies, they come up with a basic screener questionnaire. The screener questionnaire is a demographic questionnaire that scans the demographic profiles of the target consumers so that it could be established that whether these consumers would become the respondents in the study or not. A screener questionnaire is something like this, as you could see on the slide. Question number 1 is date of birth. As you could see that 18 to 24 years old is the target consumer age. Then if the date of birth of the respondent is earlier than 1989, then the interview is terminated right there and then. Question number 2 is, are you a mobile phone user? Of course, if the gentleman or the lady does not happen to be a mobile phone user, then they could not become the respondent for this study. Question number 3 is, since how long? We established earlier that we need consumers who have been using mobile phones for at least 1 year. So if anyone who's not been using a mobile phone for more than a year or for at least a year could not become the respondent in this study. Question number 4 is, are you a student? Of course, if the answer is no, then we have to terminate the interview here. Question number 5 is course of studies, institution, last degree, etc., etc. These kinds of questions usually are put in the demographic questionnaire in order to get more information about the target consumers. And this information later on can be used in different studies. So, students, at this point, let me tell you about the discussion guideline also. Once the respondents have been selected for this study, then a proper discussion guideline is prepared by the researchers. This discussion guideline entails all of the different aspects of the product usage, and those different aspects are converted into the questions. So as you could see on the slide, a discussion guideline for this focus group discussion could be constructed in such a manner. Question number 1 is, why did you decide to use your current mobile company? Question number 2 is, tell me more about that. Now this is a prop. Question number 3 is, how long have you used your current cellular company? Share your thinking on this. Once again, the respondent has been prompted to tell us more about this particular question. Question number 5 is, have you ever switched services? Now the researcher would like to know that why do they switch services and what are the different factors that respondents consider while switching the mobile phone services. So the prop here could be, does anyone see it differently? Then question number 7 is, what do you think of the overall quality of your current service? And finally, question number 8 is, what are the important criterion in selecting the current company? Students, discussion is conducted by an expert. We established that already. And expert's job is to, first of all, build up the rapport with the participants, then introduce them to the critical issues, and then finally summarize the discussion. After the focus group discussion has been conducted, all the tape records or the videotapes of the focus group discussion are carefully watched by expert researchers in order to come up with an effective analysis that would be helpful for the products manufacturing company in order to understand the consumer's preferences, so that they could come up with an effective marketing strategy to launch their products. Students, I hope you would have understood the details and intricacies of the focus group discussions. At this point, let me take you to the third technique of the qualitative research methods, which is called projective techniques. We are going to study projective techniques, which is a collection of different techniques. Students, let me tell you what projective techniques are. As you could see on the slide, projective techniques are designed to tap into the underlying motives of individuals despite their unconscious rationalizations or efforts at conscious concealment. Projective techniques consist of a variety of disguised tests, which means that usually the respondents don't know that on what particular criterion the responses are being monitored. This is so because, as we established earlier, that the methodology of the qualitative research techniques is based upon the psychoanalytic techniques. And psychoanalysis establishes that we human beings behave in different ways because we don't know why are we behaving in a certain fashion. And we don't know the reasons because those reasons lie in our unconscious. And in unconscious is all of the information that we are not aware of. So different techniques were developed in psychoanalysis that would help the researchers find out that what is going on in the unconscious of subjects. These techniques are used fairly in the consumer psychology. In qualitative research, three most important and most popular techniques, projective techniques that are used include, number 1, incomplete sentence blanks, number 2, word association test, and number 3, other person characterization. Students, with reference to word association test, let me give you a brief example to understand that what is the word association test and how is it used. In order to find that out, I am going to show you some words. All you have to do is to write a sentence on each of the words that I am going to show you. Do you have your pencil and papers handy with you? Yes? Good. Okay, are you ready to go to the first word? Fine. The first word is books. Just write anything that comes to your mind, and very quickly. There are no right or wrong answers. Have you written it? Let's go to the next word. The next word is knowledge. Write whatever comes to your mind. Have you written it? Good. And the last word is price. Have you written that? Wonderful. Now students, you might be thinking that why did I give you these words to write down sentences on them? The answer to that question is that your sentences throw light on your attitude towards purchasing books. You remember the exercise from the previous lecture in which we did almost the same thing? Yes. In word association test, while we are writing sentences, we usually, and if we are writing sentences speedily, we usually come in connection with our unconscious, and the responses come from our unconscious. When the responses are coming from unconscious, those are not properly monitored by the conscious, so we cannot conceal it. In this way, consumer researchers are able to find out that what is going on in the unconscious of the people, and what is that relevant information that drives their behavior or their attitudes towards certain kinds of products and product features. The next technique that is used as a projective technique is called incomplete sentence blanks. In order to make you understand that what are incomplete sentence blanks, let us do this exercise. As you could see on the slide, there are few sentences that you have to complete. Are you ready to complete them? All right. The first sentence is, number 1, cell phones are. Just fill the sentence, write whatever comes to your mind. There is no right or wrong answer. Question number 2 is, the problem is. Statement number 3 is, to conduct business. And statement number 4 is, youth today. Students, the way you fill these questions may represent your perception about the growing usage of cell phones. It may help you find out that what do you actually think about how the cell phones are being used, how they should be used, what are different relevant problems. Whatever related to cell phones exists in your mind, you may write that down as in response to those incomplete sentences. And an expert researcher can find out some pattern in those responses, which will help him decode that what is the attitude of the youngsters towards using the cell phones. Technique number 3 we discussed was other person characterization. Now let's do the other person characterization also, and then I will tell you that how other person characterization is defined. I am going to show you a sentence. The sentence is a modern woman. Now please answer the following questions. Question number 1 is, now think about the modern woman and answer these questions on your paper. Question number 1 is, does she speak English? Question number 2 is, does she play sports? Question number 3 is, what kind of music does she listen to? Question number 4 is, how old is she? Question number 5 is, what is her education? The next question is, what is her profession? And the last question is, how she spends her leisure time. After you have written all of these answers to these questions, you might have drafted for yourself the concept of a modern woman as it exists in your mind. Naturally, through these questions, your thinking is being guided to different aspects of a modern woman. Now, this image can be used by the researchers to come up with new ideas for a new promotional scheme. This image of the modern woman can also be communicated to the advertising agency who has been contracted by the products manufacturing company to build up advertisements based upon the promotional strategy of that particular company. So other person characterization helps find out the character profiles of different kinds of personalities that exist in our mind. Students, the last technique that we are going to discuss is metaphor analysis. Let me give you a small background of the metaphor analysis. In 1990s, a stream of consumer research appeared which believed that people do not think in terms of the words. People think in terms of images, sounds, and figures. Now, if we establish this point that people do not think in terms of images, in terms of words, or people can think better in terms of images or sounds, then we can easily understand that there would be a number of respondents out there who cannot answer certain questions or who cannot relate to certain aspects of the research being conducted through the words. If they cannot explain it through the words, then naturally there needs to be a way that they could communicate what exists in their mind through images. The result was metaphor analysis. Now, what is a metaphor? Metaphor is the use of one form of expression to describe or represent feelings about another form. In metaphor analysis, as you could see on the slide, consumers are enabled to represent their images in an alternate non-verbal form through the use of sounds, images, music, drawing, or pictures. Let me read it again for you. In metaphor analysis, consumers are enabled to represent their images in an alternate non-verbal form through the use, say, of sounds, images, music, or drawings, or pictures. Based upon this understanding, a technique was developed in United States, which was the first patented marketing research tool in the history, which was, and this tool is called the Zoltman Metaphor Elicitation Technique, ZMAT. ZMAT relies on visual images to assess consumers' deep and subconscious thoughts about products, services, and marketing strategies. Students, I hope you would have understood the qualitative research methodologies and the techniques. In our next lecture, we would discuss the subsequent parts of this chapter. At this point, we are running short of time, so let me say goodbye to you. So please take care of yourself, अपने दोस्तों का, अपने रिश्तेदारों का और गिरदोनवा के लोगों का ख्याल रखिएगा. मुझे इजाज़त दीजिए, मिलते हैं अगले लेक्चर में. अल्लाह हाफ़िज़.